afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. The Center for Teaching and Learning is excited to welcome you back to our workshop series, Backpacking with the CTL. We have with us today our Associate Provost, Dr. Michael Cottam, who will be leading his third and final review of our engagement layers while he focuses on measure and adjust. Thank you so much for being with us today, Michael, and take it away.
All right, thank you, Haley. Thank you, Jen, for putting this together, and welcome everyone as you're coming into the meeting. We'll get warmed up and rolling here in a second. But today, as Haley mentioned, is the third session related to the engagement layer. Hopefully, you've seen the email that went out, I think, this morning to kind of refresh your memory of the layers that we have presented so far. And I do expect this to be a pretty interactive session once we get through some of the additional material. And looking forward to sharing ideas. I am not of the opinion that all of the answers are defined already when it comes to how we help students learn, but that the answers are probably in the room, or at least some really good ideas. The genius is in the room. So looking forward to interacting with you today. All right, so the agenda, or not the agenda, the goal here is we're going to try to identify some measure and adjust what we call trail markers, ideas, tips, tricks, in APUS courses, and we'll try to prepare you to contribute to the APUS Engage community of practice. Again, we think that there are ideas out there in your courses. We want to share them across the institution. And it's going to look something like this. Our trail markers today, we're going to kind of remind ourselves of what the engagement layer is. We'll meet up at the trailhead. That's where we are now. We're going to kind of talk about the concepts or the definitions related to measure and adjust. We're going to connect it to quality matters, which is the foundational standards for course design that we use here at APUS. We'll also go through some examples from other courses. Some of them have been recorded and presented in APUS Engage, and some of them I'll be adding to, and I'll be asking you to share a few examples from your own practice. We'll do a little bit of interactivity around those. I have a couple of courses I've selected that we'll talk about, but I'll also be open to hearing your ideas from courses that you run. And then, again, some tips on how we can continue the conversation afterwards. And hope that makes sense to you. All right, so as we've been working on the engagement layers, we kind of use the metaphor of a long hike, the Appalachian Trail through hike here. And we have lots of tips and tricks and things that we try to get from experienced hikers and backpackers and others who have done the journey before. Today, as we're talking about measure and adjust, have any of you ever heard of the hiker boxes? I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. There's at about mile 30. So if you start down in Georgia, at about mile 30, there is a shop that's kind of famous for having this hiker box, and they're all over, they're up and down the trail. And in that hiker box, what you find is after 30 miles or so, people dump the things that they didn't really want to carry for the next thousands of steps. And maybe you can pick up something you want. Sometimes what people drop off as they do kind of a shakedown of their packs, they realize they didn't need that heavy sleeping bag, where they replace their shoes or they replace their equipment with something that works a little bit better. And it's kind of a high stakes because you're carrying everything with you on that long hike. A shakedown to make sure that you have what's going to work for you and you get rid of the things that won't. Sometimes you're dropping off things that you might not need now, but later as it gets cooler, you might need it again there. So just playing with that metaphor. you're building your courses, you're teaching your classes, you've got these ideas you think are going to be great, but now you've spent some time on the trail. You've spent some time teaching. You've spent some time redesigning, building your course out. You've learned a few things. So by the end of the session, I'm going to kind of ask you, what are you going to drop off in that box and say, I don't need that anymore? What things are you going to pick up and say, yeah, I think I should add a few other things into my course or into my practices? So let's keep playing with that metaphor today. Remember that the engagement layer, or the APUS Engage, includes both the Quality Matters rubric and teaching quality. We're trying to pull all of that together in one. And the layers are really not meant to be strict rules. They're not supposed to be absolute universals that we say you have to have 8 of these and 12 of the others, and you must use certain things. It's a matter of guidelines, of helping us to get creative. There are success principles we follow, but it's not a one-size-fits-all when it comes to course design or teaching. And we want to give some lessons learned. Again, what are we dropping in that box? What are we picking up? And not restrictions on what we do. So just reminders on that, on the theme. When we get to measure and adjust, sometimes we think about just assessment and feedback. Okay, that's part of it. But if I look at the QM rubric, I can see elements of measure and adjust all the way through, from the beginning to end. Overview and introduction, the learning objectives, all the way down through accessibility and usability. If we look for tips or guidance on how to design our courses in terms of how we measure learning, how we measure success, and how we adjust to student needs, it's really throughout the rubric. So I don't just want to point us to one thing. It's throughout the rubric. So speaking of quality matters, I'm going to ask for, I think, Jen to come on and talk a little bit about this little side trail we're doing, about quality matters and how we're doing in building up our skills and our practice with quality matters. Go ahead and talk about this one if you would, Jen.
Michael. Quality Matters is the foundation of our engagement layers. So they're what we are building our courses on. We are looking for people to take our APP QMR class. We are beginning that on September 20th, so it does start relatively soon. If you have not taken that first Quality Matters step, please go ahead and sign up. We used to do this in a 2-week time frame. Now we have extended that to 3 weeks. It's still 2 weeks worth of material, but you have a lot more time to do that. We are doing office hours where you can drop in and ask questions and get some help with it as well. So we've tried to make it a lot more user friendly. So please sign up if you haven't. If you've taken independent APP QMR or the APP QMR at all and would like to do the peer reviewer course, please email me. My email address is there on the screen, jcoster@apus.edu, and we can talk about that. There is a course that starts about every 2 weeks for the rest of the year. Would love to hear from you. We've got our completion numbers up on the screen. You can see how many people in your school have completed both the intro course and the peer reviewer course. So if you see that you don't have a lot of people who have completed those courses, maybe you want to be that first one. So get in touch with me. Let me know if you're interested in signing up. Would love to have you. And as we move and do more with Quality Matters, it'd be very helpful to have more people involved in the process.
So APP QMR, that isn't a vendor on Amazon or eBay, right? What does that stand for?
My apologies. It stands for Applying the Quality Matters rubric. So that's where it teaches you the foundational principles of Quality Matters. It's where you first learn the alignment principles. These are mainly things that you're already doing. It doesn't tell you what to do or how to teach. It just looks at how to align everything in the course. So there's a lot of myths around QM. It doesn't tell you how to teach. It just tells you how to make sure everything's aligned. Most people take it and realize, I was doing this anyway.
Thank you, Jen. And just reference to the scoreboard, we had a few teams up on the board in the word cloud. There's some teams here. Who wants to win? That's all I'll say about that one.
Yeah, there's some teams who haven't taken the field yet on the PRC one, so love to see how they get out there and start passing the ball there.
We're trying hard with the metaphors here. All right, so let me jump into measure and adjust and the ways that we have thought about this over the months. This is not an exhaustive list. This is a list that we came up with quite a long time ago about things that we might include in measurement and in adjustment. So take a look at these ideas for when we're talking about an engagement layer and making a measurement engagement. Some of the things that come to mind, making sure they're relevant and authentic. Of course, cheat resistant, we could go down that side trail, but probably not today. Formative, so do we give plenty of practice to our students and give them really good feedback? Then the summative ones, either low stakes, high stakes, or the options that we give to students there. Maybe a variety of problem-solving types of measurements, whether it be quizzes, discussions, writing, reflecting, etc. And then adjusting. That's how do we adjust or help students adjust, one or the other, to what we know about their performance in learning. Are we timely in our feedback? Are we personalized? Do we use media appropriately? We might use adaptive learning. Some of our courses are highly adaptive using software. Some are not, and you can adapt otherwise. I mean, in the classroom, I used to do like a 1-minute paper that would tell me how the students were doing, and then I could adapt what I was doing in the next session for students. That's kind of adaptive in a low-tech way. You could do the same in a discussion or otherwise. Gamify or simulate. So can we increase choice? Can we adjust to student needs and to student interest, to student talents and strengths? There might be high stakes or low stakes. There might be authentic scenarios. We're going to talk about simulations today a little bit. And we adjust, either the peers might adjust. You might do peer review work, or you might have the instructor adjusting to the needs of students. So take a look at that for a minute. Now I have activated the next question in Poll Everywhere. So I'm going to bring this one over here. What kinds of things, what additional phrases or ideas beyond what I had on the screen a second ago, or maybe there's some there that you really want to emphasize. When you think about measuring learning or adjusting to student needs, what are some of the things that come to mind for you? Before we jump into the examples, it's kind of early on, what are you thinking? Hopefully you can get there to, the link is back in the chat. Okay, options, yeah. Real world or authentic, yeah. So yeah, timeliness and manageability. I mean, we may want to talk about that a little bit today. If you over assign things or you make things too complicated, it can be difficult to get feedback within an 8-week class. Incorporating the arts, very good. We're going to show a little video around that. Or share one. Applications-based interaction, okay. Other ideas? Okay, being flexible. Okay, I'm seeing in the chat here, varied discussions, yeah. If we're using the same model for our threaded discussions every week or every term or every class, it can get kind of monotonous or boring, right? So if we vary up the way we use discussions, it's good. Variety of modalities. All right, thank you for sharing a few of those ideas. From here, we're going to jump to slide here. Now, this morning, I believe the email went out to remind you of the Engage playlist. I'm not going to go to the playlist right now or play those videos. It's not usually a great use of our time inside of an interactive session, but I encourage you to go and check some of those out. This is what your colleagues have been producing over the last well, several months, if not more than a year, to give examples for how we might measure and adjust a little more effectively. So you'll have seen several probably in here. Some of them in the little poll we saw the using the arts, right? So my question to you all, and I'm going to go back to poll everywhere here in a second, or if you're there, I'm going to move to the next question anyway. In poll everywhere, is there a video that you found particularly helpful or useful? And that includes things like, as you can see on the screen there, we have, let's see, there's a scaffolded course project. We've got using the arts in measure and adjust. We have a debate model. We have video audio feedback. We have, using the Turnitin filters as part of your feedback session, feedback process. Giving personalized video feedback, that was something that Jack Galvin put together for us a while ago. Simulations show up. So let me come over here and present. Let's see what we have. All right, so if you type in one of those titles or a brief version of one of those titles, what have you found really helpful? If you type a title in, then you'll have an opportunity to upvote a title from someone else. Again, we're using scoreboard today for some reason. Maybe it's football season. But take a look. So the Alexandria videos in the library, okay? What are some of the things that you're getting from your peers here? The videos you've seen in the playlist. Okay, what have you found helpful? The audio and video notes, I'm guessing that's what we're talking about there. If you see something in this list, you can upvote it. There we go, we're getting some upvotes. The Sylvia Nemmer's video, I guess, is getting some love here. Are there any others? Has anybody watched the one with that's using the arts? There's a couple more votes in the chat for audio and video feedback, because Sylvia did a great job with that. Okay, arts-based assessments on the list now. Let's see if any more interest in that one. That's all we've got. So we like the arts and we like audio and video. Okay, so that's a place for us to start. I'm going to dive into, okay, the case study on music business. I'm going to dive into a couple of examples here, and second. Okay, so I asked for several people for some examples, and there is one that I'm going to pull onto the screen here in a second. I'm going to ask for participation. Couple of things that I want to share here. So EDMG has a series of simulations or very rich assignments, and so I'm going to show the course a little bit, and those who are most familiar with the course may guide me to look at some different things as I'm demoing the course. But I want you to think a little bit about, and then maybe share, give your ideas. How do you think these assignments, these assessments are going to work when I show you how they work? And how, if you're doing this kind of assessment, would you adjust to student needs? How could the faculty enhance the experience of the students? So I'm going to use these as an example. I'll bring it on the screen here in a second. Just think about that. How do you think these are going to work out? So here I am with EDMG 101. And this course happens to have, size this a little bit, a few assignments that are based on what we call Bobsville. And this is probably too small for you to read, but there's a background on Bobsville as a location where disasters tend to happen. And for some reason, it all happens in Bobsville. And so we got some background on the town, on the people in the town, the officials, the businesses, all sorts of things in here. And churches, the dealerships, there's all sorts of detail in here because we use Bobsville throughout this program, the emergency management program, to situate these assignments. Okay, so that's part of it. And if I go into, let's see, I'm just going to go into assignment week 1. I'm just going to make it bigger on the screen here in just a second. So part of what we do here in this in week 1 of EDMG 101 is the students have to create a hazard vulnerability analysis. So they have information on Bobsville. They complete this whole process, 4 steps that they have to use. I'm not going to read it all. I'm giving you the idea of the way that they're measuring learning and getting students involved in it. There's instructions. There's information in the map of Bobsville in here. So there's quite a bit. This is pretty rich. And the students have to put together their in the first one, their hazards vulnerability matrix. So that's the first one. Is anyone on the call who's really familiar with this one and how it works for students? How does this kind of an assignment work?
Hey, Michael, it's Bob.
Yeah, Bob, please.
Since I created Bobsville,
Yeah.
I named it after its namesake. So the way that this works is when the students look at the Bobsville biographic information, they will go into the Excel spreadsheet and prioritize things based upon the type of event, man-made, natural, or technological. And when they're all done, it computes their hazard vulnerability matrix for them, or their assessment. And then that's how they determine how they set up their emergency operations plan, which they work on through the rest of the program to get to the capstone. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So how does this work for, how do the students react, I guess is the question. How do students react to this kind of an assignment?
Anecdotally, they liked it because it helped them. When we first did it, a lot of the students had requested if they could use their own hometown instead of Bobsville. And we kind of explained to them that the purpose of Bobsville was so that for each incident that they will encounter in the program, they will all be working from the same sheet of music, so to speak, so that the instructors are able to track the students' progress based upon one location. A lot of places call it Disaster Town USA. I spent a lot of time writing this, so I named it after myself.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go back to
Is Sam on, Michael? Because Sam can probably add to this.
He was going to be. Are you on, Sam?
Yep, Sam is here.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about how this has worked for faculty, students, and even from a design perspective?
Yeah, some of the neat thing about this course is how all of the assignments are scaffolded together. Essentially, this hazards vulnerability matrix that they're creating is a course-long project. And so they get introduced to it in week 1, but incrementally, they work on additional parts of it as the course goes on. So that list of assessments, assignments that was there, it has them doing the same thing, but looking at it and, okay, now you've learned about this category of things, the natural, now the technological, now the man-made. And that, rather than like teaching them all those things weeks 1 through 7, and then having a big project in week 8, by having them incrementally work on it as they learn about it by following good scaffolding principles, it makes it more flexible and adaptable for the instructor so that they can give feedback early on to the students saying, I can see that you're not getting this aspect of it. I'm going to let you know now. Let's have you fix it so that you don't repeat it for the rest of the project. And then in their final deliverable, they're supposed to take all of these assignments that they've wrapped together into one final submission. They're able to integrate all of the feedback that they got from the instructor in the prior weeks of the course, but they also submit it to their peers in the discussions for a peer review.
Thank you. So I'm going to toss this out to others because I do want this to be kind of be interactive as it can be. If you've tried using something like this and a kind of a rich environment where you put simulations, you put students in situations that they need to respond to, they build it over time, maybe within a course or in a program. What has been your experience with assignments like this? I want to open that to the floor. We've got a good 30 plus people in the room. Anything that you've tried with this and how it helps you to measure, how it helps you to adjust to student needs?
Michael, hi, it's Linda
Yeah.
Rhodes Swartz. I'm
Hi
a
there.
little late and I apologize
That's
to the
fine.
meeting, but I teach history and I'm in charge of World Civilizations course. And in this course, what I do is because we really don't get into up to today, I try to bring it up to today, but I make the students modern day revolutionaries and they choose a country where there's issues that they would like to see change their government. And they choose 9 grievances. It's modeled after our Declaration of Independence. They choose 9 grievances. They discuss those grievances and then they give a solution.
So Linda, can you tell me what course that was, just so I can?
It's in World Civilizations, History 112.
112? All
Yes.
right. Is there anything, make sure this is going to work. If I go into that model side, is there anything in there that it would be good for me to show?
I'm not in there. Let me go in there real
That's
quick.
okay.
Yes, if you go right under the assignments, there is I've asked students if I could use their presentation, so it gives other students an opportunity to see how it's supposed to be laid out. They could either use a PowerPoint or they could use Prezi. And a couple of the students allowed me to use their presentation, so I've basically taken their name out and put those presentations in. But let me check here real quick.
Okay. I just jumped into the course on the model site just to take a look at it, but there's some instructions here. All right.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I got where I needed to go for you, but
it's a written assignment 2.
Okay. Goes back out of that. That was assignment 1. Let me go back. I will get there on the fly. So this one, written assignment 2?
Yes. Yep. They use the CIA World Fact Book, and because it lists all of the countries that are in there, the 200 and some, and they can choose any one of those countries. If you take a look, the presentation on here, the one student did was on Syria, and I used that as a model because I was like, I couldn't believe how much work he had put into it. Some of these students don't really do that. On the first slide, they give a preamble based on our Declaration of Independence. They could use 2 slides in that. They tell the reason why, and then they go down through and they give their grievances. Now, in this course, they list the grievances on the slide, but they also use their speaker notes to write the information in there.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I was hoping we'd get another great, rich example. That's awesome. All right. And how has that worked for you and for students?
They like it. A lot of them choose countries that they've never heard of before. My military personnel, our students that are in the class, will choose countries that they've been in, and to dig a little bit more into what is going on. So I've had some, Syria, of course, is one. I've had some on Afghanistan. China's really huge topic right now. Japan is, many of the countries out in Asia. I have a lot of students, when I teach the course, do that. I unfortunately only teach it either 2 or 3 times a year because I'm teaching a lot of the other history courses as well.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you jumping in and sharing that one. Thank you. So I'm seeing a few comments in the chat here. There's a business 235 comment here. There's some about, do students actually read the feedback? My personal experience is that they tend to, when it does matter for their grades, not always, but it helps a little bit if you're building from one week to another. Thank you for that. Let me hit the next. I have one more I wanted to share. I'm at 136. Let's see. I jumped to Humanities 561. This is one that gives options to a student. So the idea with this one, and I'm going to bring it on the screen here in a second, is there's a being human assignment. And I don't know if the people who have built or teach this class have been in here. I think this is in the dev site right now. So this is a newly designed course. I'm going to bring this over here. The being human assignment has options. So one of them is a written essay with guidelines, 5-page, right? Option 2 is a multimedia presentation with a number of slides or a 10-minute video with some supports. One of the things I thought was fascinating here is we're considering accessibility, which I'm going to come back to in the workshop in a minute. You could use PowerPoint, Prezi, Animoto, put things on YouTube. So that's option 2, is doing a multimedia presentation. Option 3 in this one is a documentary trailer. So create a movie trailer for a documentary. Submit a 10-minute video. So there's some options there. So this one is in a dev site. I'm not sure if we have other courses that have done this already. But options are something that I think we might want to consider, right? For not only for accessibility reasons, but just for interest and working with the students where they are, what tools they have, what technologies they love to use, or skills they want to develop. So for anyone involved in this one, I'm going to ask you to, Sam, you might want to talk about this. You kind of sent this over to me, or if others who have worked in this class, how do you think things like this work, or how have they worked for you? Yeah, and then a good question, which option do they usually choose? Yeah. And different rubrics, okay? Anybody with knowledge of this one that would like to share?
Yeah, this is Sam. This
Yep.
was reported to me by one of the other instructional designers that's been partnering with the SME on this revision. But I've done something similar to this too, where I think that the option idea goes over really quite well. Some people, I hear opinions going different ways. That some people are like tired of writing papers, and they hear that from their students because they do that a lot, very writing based. But other people feel very strongly that we need more writing to get better at that. But in our world today, being able to present yourself over a camera is something that's becoming increasingly common. To do some type of public speaking, there are certain classes that require these types of things because the class is about public speaking. But I do have heard anecdotally from some other places of students that are interested in utilizing video more because they just find it easier to speak on a subject than it is to go through the process of writing. And it's something that, as we see what we're doing right now, virtual webcasts and things like that are becoming increasingly common.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Now, I have used options like in the past, when I was teaching design or teaching Spanish, different things that I've taught, and I have given options. What do students usually choose? I suspect that is shifting. I'm not actively teaching right now, But I did have a lot of folks, when they were given the option, use video, use slides, and then doing a voiceover on the slides. It was, even a few years ago, was becoming more and more common. I'm suspecting that it's becoming more common now. Maybe not the highly produced video, movie trailer type of a thing, but certainly I was finding presentations were becoming more common when they were given that option. And for me, I used the same rubric with verbiage in the rubric that could apply to the various different things. But I want to hear from others. If you've given assignments with options, how do you manage those student choices and then the rubrics? I could ask, has anybody done it? Have you run these types of assignments before? I do see one from Marlene in the chat there. Okay, so writing about different things is an option that's been working for you. Okay, I'm gonna move forward, but I'm gonna ask you if you come up with some ideas around this. Let's see if we can put it into our community in Engage, so that we continue the conversation. I'm gonna go to accessibility. Now, many of you know that we are in the middle of really trying to emphasize accessibility in our courses. And the assessments are one of the places, whether it be discussions, formative types of activities, summative activities, whether it's presentations, paper, whatever it is. All of our students of different abilities need to be able to access and have an equal opportunity to succeed in the class. So I've tossed some questions up here, but I'm going to go to Poll Everywhere. I have a list. If you go there. All right, I'm going to see how this works. The words are really small on my screen, but hopefully when you go to the question, you'll get some options here. The question is, if you would put these in order, which are the most important considerations for you? What do you think? Or what would work best? What would be really important for your classes when you're trying to consider the needs of all students and giving everyone access? There's the idea of providing options, and please go to Poll Everywhere if you could, and you get to move things up or down to rank these things. That's the idea here. And these statements actually come from a variety of accessibility websites, helping us to think through the needs of different students. So providing options in assessment for learners with different abilities, and we were just talking about options. Now there's removing navigation or other barriers that don't actually tie to the assessment. I think somebody's jumping in there. Everybody get in there and move things around to re-rank these. So barriers, that kind of gets to what we call extrinsic cognitive load, things that get in the way of thinking or assessing. Using and sharing clear rubrics for assessment is one of the ways that we can maybe address differences among our students. Developing learning activities with diverse colleagues. So that's working with others who might have more or a different perspective on assessment or on media to build them. Authentic assessments that align to real world performance. Simulations is one of the things we talked about today. Aligning with the learning objectives there. Let's see. Frequent formative assessments with clear feedback is one of them. Formative and summative assessments all need to be equally accessible to learners is a statement from many of these accessibility websites. I might say that some of these, as you're ranking these, some of it depends on where you're coming from, what you're teaching, right? Frequent formative assessments with feedback loop. When I was teaching Spanish, it was all about frequent speaking and reading and responding And that was it was a key of assessing and adjusting throughout the course experience to help students to get better and better. In some courses that might not be useful, might not be as high of a priority, but in certain ones in math, for example, for languages, and in others, that can be really important. Okay. Would anyone like to talk about any of these items and why you think they're really important? If so, please jump in.
Hi, this is Janet. I'm in marketing.
Hey, Janet.
Hi. Well, for me, it's all about the real life experience and trying to put that course material into perspective for students. A lot of the students that take the marketing courses may not be following that path, but I also try to draw them in with using those concepts in their personal life. Like if they have an interview and when they meet people, regardless of what industry they're working in, being able to apply these concepts. And for myself, I'm a visual learner. And so I mean, I get bored to death just by reading and reading and reading. So I need to have some kind of interactive thing going on. So I like to diversify and I like to share videos. I like to try and engage students in getting their input in our discussion boards. It seems to be working a lot better than what I initially thought. So I've just continued to do that.
Right. Thank you, Janet. Yeah.
Sure.
And as Patricia says in here, this is hard. I mean, how do you really rank them, right? But I wanted us to think about it that way in terms of what really rises to the top for you in your course. It's not going to be the same for everyone, and I don't think it should be. So appreciate that. Thank you for playing along with that one. What I'd like to encourage us all to do at this point is build the community here. Not every assessment or not every strategy for adjusting to student learning is going to fit your course. With the metaphor of the hike, you need to hike your own hike. You've got to go your speed. You have to make it match your topic, your outcomes. What are you trying to teach, and your student needs. So there are a couple of ways that you can participate, and please do. Everything you've seen in the playlists, in the video playlists, came from your peers, and they've volunteered their own expertise in working with the CTL to publish the tips, the tricks, the things that they have found helpful and useful in their classes. So thank you, Haley, for dropping the form into the chat there. But check out Engage, browse the playlists. There is a collaboration form, and that will allow you to just submit your ideas or volunteer to work with your colleagues to enrich the experience for everyone else. This is really meant to be a community. So the final thing that we want to add here, and we'll send this to you in other formats as well, but accessibility is going to be a focus for us in coming months and years. For some of you don't know, we've been going through an audit and been testing our top courses and identifying things that are not accessible in our courses so that we can improve them. So we want to encourage you as we send out resources related to this, to accessibility, that little by little, your minor revisions, the other things you do, things you put in announcements, whatever you do, let's try to make sure that it's accessible to all of our students, regardless of their abilities there. So several things on this slide, and you'll get them in another way. I want to ask you as I close up here, what did you drop off and say, I don't want to do that anymore? Or what are you going to pick up? What's in the hiker box here? It's another way of me asking, what'd you learn today? What did you learn today? Anything you want to toss into the chat? Something that's going to stick with you. You're going to take it with you and improve your courses and your teaching. All right, drop the one question discussions, pick up the options. Thank you, Patricia, for sharing that one. Any other ideas that you picked up that you want to drop off? Okay, varied options, that's an idea that's going to stick. Yeah, options. Thank you. Great. So I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. Again, we'll send out prompts to continue the conversation. Yeah, and thank you, Haley, for the calling out those courses, audio, video applications, all those sorts of things. Thank you for sharing there. Let's continue this discussion, because 1 hour isn't enough to talk about all the kinds of things that we might do to measure where our students are, and then to adjust our teaching, to adjust the design of our courses. Really appreciate you spending the time with us.